Janelle Brown's sons didn't make a scene. There was no dramatic blow-up, no public denouncement, no televised confrontation with their father. They did something quieter and, in its own way, more telling. They simply built lives of their own. Grounded, independent, capable lives that don't seem to have much room for Kody at the center. And if you want to understand the real story of the Brown family's next generation, you could do a lot worse than to look at Janelle's boys, because they embody the quiet pattern that defines the whole family now. Not rebellion, just distance, chosen calmly, lived out without fanfare. So tonight, I want to talk about Janelle's sons, with care and with respect, because their quiet story says more than all the loud ones combined. Let me start with who these young men are, because they were shaped more than anything by their mother. Janelle was always the grounded one, the practical wife, the one with the head for work and the level temperament, and it shows in her kids. Her sons grew up to be, by every public appearance, steady, self-reliant, capable people, the kind who pursue real careers, build stable lives, and don't seem interested in drama for its own sake. Logan, her eldest, has long been seen as the responsible one, the dependable older brother. Hunter pursued a disciplined, high-achieving path. Gabriel, often called Gabe, found his own way into adulthood. Across the board, Janelle's boys reflect their mother's grounded influence. They are, in the best sense, unremarkable, in that they got on with the business of building good, ordinary lives. And that groundedness is exactly the lens through which to understand a relationship with their father, because these are not impulsive young men prone to dramatic gestures. So when grounded, level-headed people create distance from a parent, it's not a tantrum, it's a considered choice. The quiet, steady kid who pulls back from a parent has usually thought about it, weighed it, and arrived at it deliberately. There's a particular weight to distance that comes from the calm ones. When the dramatic kid pulls away, you can wonder if it's a phase. When the grounded kid does it, you suspect it reflects a genuine, settled conclusion. And that's what Janelle's sons seem to represent. A settled, undramatic distance from their father, lived out quietly. Now, I want to be careful and respectful here, because we're talking about real young men and their real relationships, and I'm not going to invent private details. I don't know the precise state of each son's relationship with Kody, and I won't pretend to. What's visible publicly is a pattern of independence, of sons who have built their own lives somewhat apart from their father, in keeping with the broader family drift we've documented. I'm going to speak to that visible pattern and to what it reflects, while leaving the private specifics where they belong. Which is private. These are people, not plot points, and they deserve to have the details of their family relationships treated with discretion. Now I have to slow down and speak with real gentleness, because no honest discussion of Janelle's sons can avoid the hardest part of their story. Janelle and Kody's son Garrison passed away in 2024. It was a profound tragedy, the kind of loss that reshapes a family forever. And the Browns have carried that grief publicly and privately. I'm not going to sensationalize it or dwell on painful details because that's not what he deserves, and it's not the purpose of this video. What I'll say is that Garrison was a son, a brother, a young man whose absence is deeply felt, and that any honest accounting of Janelle's children has to hold space for him with tenderness. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to someone you trust or a support line in your area, because behind all of this are real people carrying real pain, and that matters more than any storyline ever could. I raise it not to dwell, but because it's impossible to talk about this family, and about Janelle especially, without acknowledging the weight she carries. A mother who has endured that kind of loss is navigating her remaining relationships, including with her surviving sons, through a lens of grief that the rest of us can only imagine. It surely deepens the bonds among the people who shared that loss, and it surely reshapes what matters to all of them. So when we talk about Janelle's sons and their grounded, independent lives, we're talking about young men who have also lived through something almost unbearable. Together, as a family. That context belongs in the picture, handled with the care it deserves, because it's part of who they are now. Let me return to the broader theme, gently, because the surviving son's independence does tell us something important about the family. Janelle's boys, like so many of the Brown children, have built lives that look nothing like the plural family model they grew up in. They've pursued conventional paths, careers, and, in their own ways, lives centered on stability rather than on the lifestyle, or on their father. That's the same pattern we see across this generation. The kids, by and large, have chosen ordinary, self-built lives over continuing what their parents modeled. Janelle's sons are a clear example of it. Grounded young men quietly choosing their own way, carrying their mother's practical strength forward into lives of their own design. And I think their mother is a huge part of why they turned out so steady. We've talked on this channel about how the Brown kids tend to be closest to their mothers, and Janelle's sons seem to exemplify that. Janelle gave them a model of self-reliance, of quiet competence, of getting on with life without drama. That's a powerful inheritance, arguably a much more useful one than anything the lifestyle offered. So when we look at these grounded young men, we're really looking at Janelle's legacy in action. The strength they carry is, in large part, the strength she gave them. In a family where so much went wrong, the steadiness of Janelle's children stands as quiet evidence of what she got right as a mother, often while shouldering more than her share. Let me reflect on what it means that the distance from Kody is so undramatic, because I think it's actually the most damning version of distance there is. A dramatic estrangement, with shouting and public accusations, at least suggests strong feelings, a relationship still hot enough to generate conflict. The quiet distance of Janelle's sons suggests something cooler and, in a way, more final. It's the distance of people who have simply moved on, who aren't angry so much as disengaged, who have built lives where their father is more of a peripheral figure than a central one. That kind of calm, settled distance is harder to bridge than hot conflict, because there's no fire to address, just a quiet, steady absence of closeness. It's the relationship equivalent of a slow fade rather than a breakup, and slow fades rarely reverse. I want to be fair and acknowledge the limits of what we can know, because that's only honest. Family relationships are private and complex, and the public sees only fragments. It's possible some of Janelle's sons are warmer with Kody than the general pattern suggests. It's possible relationships will evolve. I'm describing a visible pattern and what it seems to reflect, not pronouncing a final verdict on anyone's private bonds. The grounded independence of these young men is real and visible. The precise temperature of each father-son relationship is not fully ours to know, and I'd rather underclaim than put words in anyone's mouth about something this personal. What I'm confident about is the broad shape. Sons who built their own grounded lives, somewhat apart from their father, in keeping with the family's larger drift. So when I step back and look at Janelle's sons, here's what I see. I see grounded, capable young men who carry their mother's quiet strength. I see a distance from their father that is calm and considered rather than dramatic. The kind of distance that comes from settled conclusions, not tantrums. I see a family that has endured a profound, heartbreaking loss together, which deepens and complicates everything. And I see, in these steady young men quietly building their own lives, the clearest embodiment of the whole next generation's path. Not rebellion against their father, just a calm, deliberate choice to build something of their own. It's the quietest story in the family, and somehow that quiet is exactly what makes it so telling. Let me say a little more about the individual paths these young men have taken, sticking to the broad public picture, because the specifics illustrate the pattern. Logan, as the eldest, long carried the role of the responsible one, the steady older brother who set a tone of dependability for the others. Hunter pursued a disciplined, demanding path, the kind that requires structure, focus, and self-reliance, the very qualities his mother modeled. Gabriel found his own way into adulthood alongside his brothers. What unites them isn't any single career or choice, it's a temperament, a steadiness, a sense that these are young men who decided early that they wanted real, grounded lives, and then went and built them. None of them seems to have sought the spotlight or the drama. They seem to have wanted, more than anything, normalcy and self-determination. And in a family like this, choosing normalcy is itself a kind of quiet statement. I think the bond among these brothers, and between them and their mother, deserves real attention, especially in light of what they've been through. Families that endure profound loss together are often drawn closer by it, bonded by a grief that only they fully understand. Janelle and her surviving children share something that no outsider can touch. A loss that is theirs alone, and that shared sorrow, as heavy as it is, tends to forge a particular closeness, a circling of the wagons, a sense that the people who went through it together are the people you hold on to. So when we picture Janelle's sons today, we shouldn't picture isolated individuals. We should picture a tightly bonded family unit, mother and sons, holding together through the hardest thing a family can face. That bond is its own quiet testament to the kind of family Janelle built. Let me dig into what they actually inherited from Janelle, because I think it's the heart of why they turned out as they did. Janelle modeled something specific throughout the show. She modeled work. She modeled keeping your head when others lost theirs. She modeled building your own security rather than waiting for someone to provide it. She modeled a kind of emotional steadiness that didn't need to perform itself. Children absorb these things, not from lectures, but from watching, day after day, how a parent actually moves through life. And her sons clearly watched. They absorbed her practicality, her work ethic, her groundedness. So when people marvel that Janelle's kids turned out so stable despite the chaos of the family around them, the answer isn't mysterious. They had a mother who, whatever the dysfunction surrounding her, consistently modeled stability. You become what you see, and they see Janelle. Now let me draw the contrast that makes their distance from Kody so revealing, the contrast with Robyn's children. We've discussed how, by every visible sign, the children Kody is closest to and most present with are concentrated in Robyn's household. So look at the split. The sons Kody seems most distant from are the grounded, self-built ones from Janelle's branch. The kids he's closest to are in the household that received the most of his time and attention over the years. That's not a coincidence. It's the favoritism pattern showing up once again in who ended up close and who ended up distant. The sons who got less of their father, by many accounts, are the ones who built lives that don't center him. You tend to stay close to the parent who showed up for you. Distance, often, is just the long echo of absence. There's also something worth saying about fathers and sons specifically, because the dynamic carries its own weight. Sons often look to their fathers as a model of what a man is supposed to be, and when a son grows up and, with adult eyes, evaluates that model and decides he wants to be a different kind of man, that's a profound and quiet form of separation. It's possible that Janelle's sons, in building grounded, present, steady lives, are consciously or unconsciously choosing to be a different kind of man than the example they grew up with. That's not necessarily said with anger. It can be done with a calm, clear-eyed determination. I love my mother's steadiness. I want to live like that. And if that's any part of what's happening, then their grounded lives aren't just independence. They're a quiet correction, a generation deciding to do it differently. Let me zoom out to the universal truth here, because Janelle's sons embody something a lot of people will recognize from their own families. In many families, it's the grounded, undramatic children who create the cleanest distance from a difficult parent. The dramatic kids fight, reconcile, fight again, stay entangled. The grounded ones just quietly build a life with less and less room for the difficult parent in it. And they do it so calmly that it barely registers as estrangement at all. It's not cold exactly, it's just self-protective and clear. They've decided what kind of life they want and who fits in it, and they proceed accordingly, without needing to announce or justify it. Janelle's sons seem to be doing exactly that. And anyone who's watched a steady sibling quietly drift from a difficult parent will recognize the pattern instantly. I want to make sure I give Janelle her due as a mother, because her son's steadiness is, in a real sense, her achievement. And it came at a cost we shouldn't gloss over. Think about what she was managing. A complicated plural marriage, financial pressure, a husband whose attention was divided and, by many accounts, often elsewhere. The slow dissolution of the family, and then the unimaginable loss of a child. Through all of that, she raised sons who became grounded, capable, self-reliant adults. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a mother, under enormous strain, kept showing up, kept modeling stability, kept doing the quiet work of parenting well, even when her own circumstances were anything but stable. The steadiness of Janelle's children is one of the clearest pieces of evidence we have of how much she carried and how well she carried it. So what does the future hold for these relationships? I'll be honest, the calm distance of grounded people is, as I said, often harder to reverse than hot conflict, precisely because there's no crisis demanding resolution. But families do evolve, and grief sometimes reshuffles priorities in unexpected ways. It's possible that time, or genuine change on Kody's part, could draw some of these relationships closer. but it would require real effort. The patient, humble kind. And it would have to reckon with everything that came before. I don't make predictions about private relationships I can't see. What I'll say is that the door, with grounded people, is rarely slammed. It's just quietly, calmly left mostly closed. Whether it opens further depends on choices that haven't visibly been made yet. And maybe the most important thing to take from Janelle's sons is simply this. In a family that gave us so much chaos, so much drama, so many cautionary tales, here is a quiet success story. Young men who came through an extraordinarily complicated childhood and a devastating loss and emerged grounded, capable, and self-determined. That's not nothing. In fact, it might be the most hopeful thread in the entire family, because it suggests that even in the middle of dysfunction, a steady parent can raise steady children, and those children can go on to build the ordinary, stable lives that the chaos around them never modeled. Janelle's sons are proof that the cycle can be broken, that you can come from all of this and still build something solid. And honestly, after everything this family has been through, that quiet proof of resilience might be the best news the Brown story has to offer. And there's a quiet dignity in the way these young men have carried themselves through all of it that I think deserves to be named directly. They could have monetized their family's drama. They could have gone public with grievances, traded on the famous name, turned their pain into content the way the genre so often invites. By and large, they haven't. They've kept their heads down, protected their privacy, and gotten on with the work of living. In an era where the easiest path for a reality show kid is to stay in the spotlight and feed the machine, Janelle's sons chose the harder, quieter path of just being regular people. That restraint, that refusal to perform their lives or their grief for an audience, is its own form of strength. And it's one more thing they seem to have learned from the most grounded woman this show ever produced. So I'll turn it over to you, and I'd ask that the comments on this one stay as respectful as the subject deserves. Which of Janelle's children would you most want a thoughtful, respectful update on? And here's the bigger, gentler question for the comments. Do you think the grounded steadiness of Janelle's kids is the clearest proof of what she got right as a mother, even through everything she's endured? Tell me where you land, because these are the conversations that honor the real people behind the show, and I read every comment. If you'd like me to do a careful, respectful look at Janelle's journey as a mother across all her children, let me know, and I'll build it with the care it requires. And if you appreciate that we handle this family's hardest chapters with genuine tenderness, instead of turning grief into content, then do me a favor and subscribe, because compassion is not optional here. It's the whole point.